Good morning. It's almost good afternoon, but in Spain the afternoon only starts at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But still we have little time. You know, in Lisbon, some 300 years ago, they made an aqueduct. Can you see something? Yeah. And how does it look now? Well, I had a friend and said at least one of the arches is still empty. So maybe there we can put the bicycles and the pedestrians. But it's difficult to put them in the same arch. And why is that? Because what is the biggest enemy for the pedestrians? Who is the biggest enemy in the mobility world? Of course, the bicycle, not the car, not the truck. That's why we have two world conferences every year. One is called Walk 21 for the walkers, and one is called Velocities. So they are separate and they can talk badly about each other. Anyway, our theme, as you know, is walking and cycling, and then somewhere is written transit-oriented mobility, where our friend is the big specialist. Anyway, you know that just recently the charter was approved in Quito, where Salvador is working also, and they decided on 17 sustainable goals. I don't know why it's not 18 or 20 or 15. Anyway, you don't find there cycling and walking. But of course, you find sustainable communities. And even transport, you don't find a special thing. It's written there that there is a high-level group for sustainable transport, and then inside that somewhere we are located. So we have our group of inputters. That's not the proper English word, but since we have very little time and you are as much specialists as we are, we would like to have some time for discussion, and that's why the gentleman and the lady will be inputters and not speakers. And we are geographically organized. We start in Qatar, and we end up on the other side in California. And then we have in the middle the mayor from Albania. We have Priya from the UK, and we have Salvador right here from Barcelona. And well, the moderator doesn't count, but I would be somewhere between Portugal and Switzerland. Okay, and they put these black and white photos and cut them out. So now we will start with Robert. First PowerPoint, please.
Buenos dias, good morning. As Robert had mentioned, this session is called Walkable and Cyclable Cities, but it also mentions to focus on transit-oriented development. So I thought what I would do in my limited time is try to bridge the two and specifically talk about how to design and plan for cities where we move people from driving their car as a means to access metro rail and public transport to walking and biking. If you look in many parts of the world in the suburbs, certainly advanced economy, the dominant land use around metro rail stations is parking lots, and it's a huge waste of land. It separates activities, it creates heat island effects. It certainly carries environmental pollution, oil-stained runoff draining into streams and rivers. But also, if you have to use a car as part of the trip of using public transport, you negate many of the benefits, the environmental benefits. Why? Because of the inefficiency of the car of a short distance access trip. The cold start phenomena, you get disproportionately high tailpipe emission rates, energy consumption rates. Plus, if you're in a low-income country, parking lots are really not a pro-poor policy. They benefit the elites that have access to cars. Most folks don't use cars. So there's a lot of costs that come with park and ride. So I'm sorry, yeah. So I'm gonna focus my very limited remarks on a little bit of the research that tells us what's necessary to induce more folks to ride bikes and walk to public transport versus using their car. I'm playing the role more of the academic here. So as it relates to transit-oriented development, I think there's no question at a regional scale that's the most efficient, sustainable built form. But I think the way to think about transit-oriented development, it's really pedestrian-oriented development. That is, it's the development where most folks within a neighborhood, when they're accessing transit, they walk and sometimes bike, and then you use high-capacity, high-performance transit to get between neighborhoods. So TOD is POD, it's pedestrian-oriented development, and I just have some images of some French cities here in terms of how they try to design these 5-minute walk sheds around high-capacity public transport and then using transit to get about the city. There's a very interesting study that just came out from the Institute of Transport Development Policy where they ranked cities, these are OECD cities, as a function on the horizontal axis density and on the vertical axis is the percent of people who are more or less within a 1,000-meter distance of a metro or a rail station. And what I'm doing here is just trying to summarize what the research and most studies tell us are critically important to inducing walk and ride and bike and ride. So what this tells us is compact cities is critically important. And I point out Barcelona actually scores the highest here. Barcelona has, for instance, a very similar population to Atlanta in 1/25 the land area, and correspondingly, because so many folks walk and take public transit, it has roughly 10% of the carbon dioxide emissions per hectare per people. Why? Because Barcelona is compact. It has a lot of 4 to 5 story buildings spread throughout the city, and it's got a very dense mesh of metro rail services. That allows roughly 75 to 80% of all people to be within a walkable distance of a metro rail station. But it's not just how compact the city is, it's how it's designed, arts design, but also mixed use. We did a study recently in the UK where we found you induce people to ride a bike if you have gardens and green space and rivers and blue waterfronts. So amenities and design do matter, but also do land uses. This study told us using 4 square venue density intensities, it told us as you have more activities along a corridor, a bikeway corridor, people are more likely to use a bike because they can easily make intermediate stops. They can drop off a bike, go to a restaurant, meet a friend after work, say. So land use mixes also matter. Other catalysts is obviously high connectivity to be able to get to key destinations as directly as possible, minimizing circuity, and as well as having what are called low stress paths. Minimizing conflict points, having dedicated cycleways in separated places, and having things like bridges and tunnels, which are fairly cheap to build for bikeways because you don't have to have the huge overhead clearances and very significant structures. This was a very brief study in the lower part of this slide showing as we expanded the network, enhanced connectivity in the Fruitvale BART station in the San Francisco Bay Area, the bike access shed quadrupled as those features doubled. So there's a fairly compelling empirical evidence telling us design does matter and land use patterns matter. This just shows, for instance, Portland, Oregon, in 1990 had a very disconnected bikeway network. The darker shades show the percent of all trips by bicycle. As the network expanded and interconnected more, you got a fairly significant increase in the shares of commute trips by bike. Because of time, I'm going to end this pretty quickly, but in terms of some of the other catalysts, hardware matters, infrastructure. For instance, we are seeing technology used. This happens to be Copenhagen, where there is an app that can tell you whether you need to speed up or slow down your bike in order to hit a green wave so that you can hit consecutive green lights to have a smooth trip. Just like motorists need parking, we obviously have to have secure parking and protected parking for cyclists. This is just an image in Tokyo where they have automated tunnel underground bike parking. And obviously things like bike sharing are critically important. Mm-hmm. But it's not just hardware, it's software, it's public policy, allowing and designing for putting bikes on trains. Or again, a city like Copenhagen where 35% of all trips are by bicycle, and in the suburbs about 45% of access trips are by bicycle. That was a policy where they said, every square meter of additional road capacity built in the city has to be matched by a comparable amount of square meter of pedestrian capacity and cycling capacity. So there simply was a quid pro quo saying we have to at least design as much for cycling and walking as we do for automobility. And you see inclusive cycling as a result. In a city like Copenhagen, and you can cite many other cities, cycling cuts across age groups, gender, trip purposes. People use it for shopping, and even weather conditions. Part of this is Copenhagen, again, was consciously designed, taking away very precious, limited urban space and giving it over to pedestrians and cyclists. So I just point this last image at the lower right-hand side is a former parking lot now given over to a food garden and a farmer's market. This is critically important. Research tells us access to healthy food sources, things like farmers markets, can significantly reduce the incidence of cardiac disease through healthy eating. What François Reeves, a internal cardiologist, calls nanoaggressors. We have food nanoaggressors, but also air nanoaggressors from excessive use of the car. So if we can induce walking and cycling and public transit use and have more space for healthy eating, this has huge effects. So my very last slide, I mentioned software and policy. Well, I think ultimately it is about reordering our priorities as it relates to precious space, precious time, and enforcement. If you happen to be from Lithuania, this is what the mayor said should be enforcement. So we need to shift from this mobility priority to this mobility priority. And I will close with that. Thank you.
Hello, Robert. Actually, as you noted, we are two Roberts, and whenever he presents, he's coming out there from California. We feel very much at home, we Europeans, because he is kind of showing us that a lot of elements are actually quite European, at least in California, right? You notice that he said that he will speak more from the research perspective. Actually, our panel has a very varied background. We have a politician, we have business people, we have action people, so that's a nice mix. And as you notice, there is no CVs presented because the best CV is the presentation, right? The rest you can see on the internet. You notice that, I don't know, you have an app on the Smart City Conference, and through the app you can ask questions to these guys. I should get the tablet, which I didn't get, to get the questions then. Anyway, but don't use too much time writing. It's better listening to these guys, because if the app doesn't work, you can also ask in the old-fashioned way your questions. So let's go to Salvador Rueda. He is by chance here, because usually he's in Quito, in Argentina, in wherever, or in at least in Vitoria-Gasteiz, where he implemented the first super squadra. And he's now very happily sending us the articles of the New York Times, of CNN. So please, Salvador.
Thank you, Robert. Good morning. Excuse me because I speak English just a little, but I hope my presentation will be understand for you. If there are some problems with my reflection after the conference, or even when you ask me something, I hope I can answer correctly. Well, to speak about the new mobility plan of Barcelona, and also how the walkable and bikeable city is possible with a new cell, urban cell, how superblocks. The superblock is a new cell where currently we have in the in the left of the scheme, we have all the streets related with the mobility. In the right scheme, we have the superblock. The superblock is a cell for 400 to 400 meters, okay, more or less. And the black lines is to allow to connect one point of the city with the other. And inside of this shape, we have the streets converted, transformed in a place for pedestrian and bicycle, above all. The cars can go in, but with loops, when they go inside of the super block, after that, return to the same street that we go in at the beginning. In all the streets is the same, okay? And the speed inside of the super block is only 10 kilometers per hour. But the cars don't go through to the super block. It's very, very important. After that, the number of cars that go in the super block is practically nothing. Only the cars that they need, because your destination, each destination sort, is inside of the super block. This is the current situation in Barcelona. The 85% of the public space, the streets, is related with the displacement, the mobility, the functionality, and is the practically unique right that you make use these streets in our city. And the local policy is the manager of this space. It supposes about 15 million of square meters for this use. This is the proposal of the urban mobility plan of Barcelona. It means to reduce more than 60% of the length of the streets in Barcelona related with the mobility. We pass to 900 kilometers to 355 kilometers for the new scenario. It supposes that the right of mobility is in the red line in this card, okay? And suppose also that we gain about 7 million of square meters of the cars. It supposes that the pedestrian and bicycles gains also a lot of space like this. In numbers, in a fabric like a Champlain, we have in this moment about 40% of the space, the public space related with the pedestrian sidewalks. But in the case of the super block, when this is implemented, we have 94% for the pedestrians, also for bicycles. We will see. This is the current situation in our cities, and this is that we want make in our city after the implementation of the urban mobility plan of Barcelona. The quantity of surface implied with walkable for the pedestrian spaces, we have about 2 million of square meters with this possibility. With the super blocks is, I said, about 7 million more than of public space for these users. At the end, we have quite the 70% of the space for the pedestrian. For bicycles in this moment we have these lines currently, but at the end we want develop a network, a new network. In this moment the municipality is building about 200 kilometers more of this network. But for transport, we want to develop this new network in the basic streets. But inside of the superblock, it's possible to go with bicycle, by foot, but also by bicycle, and it's possible to go through. Go through in two sense inside of the superblock. It's supposed that practically the 90 or 95% of the city is cyclable and walkable. This is the new network. For the pedestrian and bicycles, we want multiply the surface related with the green spaces, and it's possible with the super blocks, okay? And at the end, in the case of the San Martín district, we have about 174 hectares of green spaces, and at the end, we will have about 200 hectares more of green spaces with the super blocks. Ya acabo, This is the integration of the all networks, mobility networks, and also the green network. The super block allow us to integrate all the networks for first time, I think. And the more radical idea of this project is to gain new rights in the public space. Today, the 85% of the public space is related with the mobility. One right only. We want to introduce the exchange, the market in the public space, the culture and knowledge, the leisure, and also the democracy. And mobility also, naturally, okay? Un minuto, un segundo, dos segundos, 30 segundos, perfecto. This is the expression of that idea, of this idea, and at the end, the impact with this plan is the acceptable public space today in Barcelona is for the 56% of people. With the superblock is 94%. And the noise is 57%, and with the superblock, the 73%. Thank you.
You know, Salvador is a very proud Catalan, so he's talking all the time about Barcelona. But about 4 years ago, we had the Civitas Forum, which is a very important forum where cities meet in Vitoria-Gasteiz. And there he presented the same idea, but it was already happening in the streets, which means that often it's not only the big cities who have the means to make innovation, but very often it's the smaller cities also, right?
Medium.
Small, medium, yeah. Okay, so remember, I have already 2 questions. You can put your questions there. You can also rate them that you get up. Now, we have, as usual, a very unbalanced inputter panel. We have only one lady. I don't know why. I mean, everybody knows that the ladies are smarter than the men, but they are not on the panel. So let's welcome Priya. She is is living in the UK, but she told me she just arrived from India, where you are from, probably, no?
No, I went for a trade mission.
Ah, for a trade mission. So please.
Cool. Can I use...
Yes. Yeah, sure.
Can you hear me? Is this better? Can you hear me? Perfect. Okay, everybody. So it's an interesting panel. We have a a professor, we have an urban planner, we have a mayor, we also have a real estate developer. So I'm going to take the role of the citizen and the cyclist and entrepreneur. So I'm wearing 3 hats. So today I'd like to talk a bit about my own personal experience, which kind of made me create this platform called Changeify. I'm part of the London Mayor's High Growth Business Program on the London stand. So if you want to come and see a bit more about what we're doing and meet other London startups in urban tech, do drop by. So a bit about what our platform is, and I'll come and tell you the backstory on how this started as a cyclist. That's me. How I started this is Changeify is a tailor-made, fast, easy citizen engagement platform for cities, peoples, business providers who want to basically figure out how they can use real-time people decision-making processes to improve public infrastructure. And the reason I started this was I'm a cyclist. I'm a cyclist in London for 15 years. And actually, I had a pretty bad accident. Now, how many of you guys are cyclists in the audience? Can I have a show of hands? Yay, excellent. So you know that feeling when you've seen a problem, it could be a pothole, it could be a dodgy junction, and you've seen it every day in your commute, and you've tried to report that. You've tried to write a letter to your counselor. You've also blogged about it, tweeted about it, but nothing happens. And then one fine day, when you're really busy and something's in your head, you kind of have the accident in the exact spot which you've been talking about for the last 6 months. That's what happened to me. And I have 2 ghost bikes. So in London, you have ghost bikes. You know, when someone dies in a cycle accident, they paint their bike white. I have 2 ghost bikes outside my house in exactly the same spot where I had my accident. And actually, this made me really furious. Because it's not that it's just a pothole. I had told the city authorities, I had written to my counselor, but the problem is, when citizens try to make bottom-up change, because we're talking about citizens and cities working together in this particular expo, it's very hard for bottom-up citizens to come together and work with the contractors who manage the roads in the cities, and also the government who give the contract to the contractors. So these 3 circles are silos. They don't talk to each other. So what our platform started doing is, I had an idea about how we could aggregate data from multiple sources. So just like I had called the call center of my council, so the call center data, the data from social media, the data from CRM report care, wanted to aggregate data from multiple sources of things that people are already reporting and be able to prioritize that. Now the problem is not every citizen report is most important, and cities don't have money. We need to find a way to improve the prioritization of issues that facing cities in real time so that we can create the right kind of fixes and a 2-way feedback loop between the citizen and the city. So what we're doing right now as a case study is we're working with Amy Ferrovial in Plymouth, and we wanted to figure out how we could improve the road and traffic safety in the city of Plymouth. We worked with actual communities, went around the streets, getting people to understand or getting people aware that we're going to start a pilot which involves road users, not just cyclists. And I don't mean by cyclists a typical lycra-clad cyclist. These are just normal people, like a family day out, where they want to just have a city that is cycle-friendly, nothing unusual. And at the same time, what I can't stand is as cyclists versus motorists versus truck drivers versus pedestrians versus mums with prams, I think that is really not the right way to go about thinking about a holistic city experience. You think about walkable cities or pedestrians, you want to be finding a way where people can share, because obviously I also walk in the city, I also cycle, I can take the tube. I go through in a day in my life of multimodal transport modes, so I shouldn't have to have that cyclist versus motorist kind of a discussion. We are all cyclists and we are all motorists and we are all pedestrians in different times of a day. So we wanted to involve different people in the core design of the platform and during the pilot itself. And what we have here is a very simple reporting app where you can take photos. It's nothing like rocket science. This exists. You can take photos of things that you see on your cycle ride or when you're walking. And when you do that, you basically use the camera as a voting button. So it's not just about complaining. If you've seen something good in the city, you can take a photo and say, good job. So the camera already has a prioritization to say what is actually important. If something's wrong, you can say, watch out. And when that happens, people who are part of the same pilot or network, they swipe to back to back your report. And when that, we also do that by aggregating data from CCTV as well. So suddenly, instead of citizens being surveilled, we have a two-way feedback between the citizen and the city. So for example, imagine you've seen an accident and the city has the footage on CCTV, but they can corroborate that evidence from other people who have actually viewed the accident as well. And we basically get the local retailers involved to also back these reports. And when that happens, the report starts trending from the citizens by popular votes. The councillor, so this was my problem, right? The councillor is also getting a notification to show what are those real-time issues in their constituency. And here you can see that a particular report from that particular citizen has been backed by a local retailer who wants to support this community project. And at the same time, the councillor can see that's getting more support in the businesses itself. And this becomes basically a data challenge. So we're following a Kickstarter model. Instead of backing a product, you create a data challenge where lots of citizens, lots of road users can go out and start collecting data in order to improve that particular infrastructure. When that happens, Amy in their network, in their operation center, can see in real time what are the key issues that are coming from road users and are able to allocate resources accordingly. And when they complete the work, they put the fix in the system. So this way, there's a complete feedback loop. So this is what we're doing. We are spotting, it makes it easy to spot and snap as a citizen, swipe to vote, and basically prioritize the change in real time. And what we've done is we also create a back-end dashboard so cities can, so the service providers can see in real time how they can allocate resources. And we have an API which integrates across the network. So next time, just like in Uber, you rate a driver, you can also rate the road as well. So for us, it's really about bringing the citizens, service providers, and the government together. So if you are any of these people and you'd like to know how to bring this to your city, I'm looking to meet property developers, telecom providers, service providers. Come and find me in the GLA stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Priya. You know, the European Commission always invents new titles and concepts. And for much time now, we talked of triple helix, which is business, government, and research. And they always forget that it should be quadruple helix, as you prove that we need the community and the citizens participating. Very good. Thank you very much. Yes. Now, I have to resort to call you Erion, because I didn't have a chance to talk with you before. Do pronounce your name, which would be? Verion. Well, not so much. So you are a mayor, but you are a triple M mayor, because you are a mayor, you were a member of parliament, and you were a minister. So there you have a triple helix all by yourself.
I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse, but
well,
yes.
that we'll find out right now.
All right.
If people want to sit, there are some spaces in the front. You can come forwards, please.
Okay, well, I'll use my first minute to start with a joke. There was once this rabbit in a forest who was very scared. And he was talking to his friends. He said, I can't spend the rest of my life in fear. Everybody wants to eat me. I'm the bottom of the food chain in the animal kingdom. So he's running away, and one friend in the forest says, look, you have to go and see the owl. The owl is the very smart person in the forest. He went to Harvard. He's an expert. So the expert will tell you how to deal with your fear and paranoia. So the rabbit goes to the owl and says, look, help me out. I cannot live the rest of my life running away. And the owl says, I have a solution for you. He fixes his glasses and he says, my dear friend, you have to become a lion. Because if you become a lion, you're in the top of the food chain. No one wants to eat you up if you're the lion. The rabbit is very excited. He says, I've been waiting my whole life for a solution like this. And then he tries to run away and then says, I have a follow-up question. How do I become a lion? And here's where the owl says, my friend, I'm only in charge of strategic thinking, not project implementation. So as a mayor, you actually have to implement a lot of the good ideas that come out from these forums and from the experts. I come from Tirana, Albania. Until 25 years ago, it was the North Korea of Europe, one of the most isolated communist countries. But I think, speaking of the animal kingdoms, we as humans, we're walking animals. You know, if fish are made to swim, if birds are made to fly, if deer are made to run, a good friend of mine who's another mayor in Bogota. He says, you know, then humans are animals that are made to walk. So walking is our actually natural state. Our natural state is not to sit behind a wheel. Our natural state is not to be idle. Our natural state is to walk and to go around in places. Now, the interesting thing about Albania is 25 years ago, the capital, where I'm mayor now, had 17 cars. 17. It was a communist country. Only the Politburo and the head of the army had a car. Now it has 170,000 cars. And a city that went from 200,000 people to 1 million people. So the question is this only a question or an issue of infrastructure, or is it also an issue of culture? And I think it's a bit of both. Sometimes mayors in the past, when they go from 17 cars to 170,000, they think that adding more lanes solves the problem. This is the equivalent of fighting obesity by loosening your belt. No, you don't do it by loosening your belt, you do it by going on a diet. And I think for anyone who has doubts that this is not how you handle issues of traffic in a city, you go to Houston, you go to LA, you have 8 lanes going each way, and still there's traffic. The more lanes you build, the more traffic you have. So it's both an issue of infrastructure, of course, but also an issue of culture. I think the best way to find out whether a city really is into biking is not whether the mayor goes and uses a bike. It's always good to use your personal example, but the best way is to look at the budget. If there's no budget for bike lanes, for a minimum grid which provides a safe passage, for transit and public transport, then the rest is just talk. You see a lot of great cities who do a fantastic job just painting the street. That is not taking biking seriously or public transit very seriously. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg, you know, which comes first. Do I have to move the slide as well? All right.
You're still on the first slide.
Yeah, exactly. Got too carried away with the joke. So the way the cities plan and budget their infrastructure pretty much tells you how serious they are about issues of public transit. Also, people need organizing. Sometimes, before I used to work as a civil society activist, specialized primarily in overthrowing governments. So when friends ask me, how's my new job? And I said, look, building a government is much more difficult than taking one down. But from my previous life, every time I'd say, this is outrageous, how come no one's protests? Everybody says, yeah, we need to protest, but let someone organize it. People are in constant need of someone to organize. I think it's the job of the city to be a chief organizer when it comes to people using alternative modes of transport. Things like running bike paths, or organizing days without cars, or occupying a public square, which we did with our good friends from T-Mobile here. When we decided this was the major roundabout in the capital, Tirana, or one of the 3 major roundabouts. And we decided that rather than hiding away in clubs or bars for football matches, why don't we do an Occupy the Square, where we could watch a football match all together in the middle of the busiest square, and reclaim the streets, not by a mayor's decree, by public civic action. We've organized so many events there. Last week we had to open the square before we put a Christmas market. The very same people who revolted when we blocked the square, the roundabout, are the very same people who protested now because we opened the square for just 1 month for traffic. So cultures and mentalities absolutely do change. I think it's also an issue for a lot of mayors or city planners to decide on a system of values. Now, I come from a middle-income developing country. Some of you probably from the same. Some come from rich countries. But the value question we need to answer is, what is our ambition? Is our ambition that every poor person eventually gets a car? Or is our ambition that rich people eventually get on a bus? And once we answer this question, which is a question of value, then I think we can answer other questions of budget and finances and infrastructure. How do we change culture? Kids are fantastic when it comes to being a mayor's advocate. Sometimes people hire PR firms and lobbyists and these talking heads on TV. But we found out in Tirana that kids are phenomenal when it comes to mentality change. When we organize these days without cars, which blocks most of the city to traffic, the only people that initially got very excited were children. I'll go back. Were children. Because children don't have an agenda, children don't have a car, children don't pay taxes, And children don't vote. So children have no strings attached when they make decisions. So I would meet parents who in the beginning were protesting, and then they would come to me and they say, my goodness, Erion, we're in such trouble. My son, my daughter wants rollerblades, they want roller skates, they want hoovers, they want scooters. And eventually we were able to win the city without spending a cent on advertisement or in lobbying for change, but rather recruiting children. Children are like planting a revolutionary in every household when it comes to alternative transport and occupying streets to the public. Last but not least, and then maybe I'll answer some questions, the use of technology. We decided that it's important to give people, how did I lose my thing? Oh, because I'm out of time? All right. I got punished. All right. Let's go here. So, giving people access. This is actually the same app as our colleague from London, which is based on a C report fix. Ours is less democratic. People don't vote. Tony, who's my director of public works, he just goes to fix them without the voting part, because we believe that it's everybody's right to have things fixed. In a huge city like London, probably you have to prioritize. In a slightly smaller city, we have to just get things done and get them fixed. But one part of the app, rather than fixing the potholes and stuff, which is the most frequented, is giving people access to CCTV. We felt that there was no reason why the city should have a monopoly, the mayor and the experts and the owls, to have a monopoly on this public information. We've made this public for all the city. So people download an application. They can take a look at any camera they want. They have full access to all the city CCTV. They tap on the camera near the network. They can make a decision whether to take a car based on how they see the traffic flow or based on the weather. And I think it also gives people the power to sort of say, it's not some abstract authority who decides on my travel patterns, but it's also myself becoming an educated citizen and looking with my own eyes what traffic does to a city, how it kills business, and how it kills public space. I have a few more ideas, but maybe on our second round of questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Member of Parliament and Minister. I think you did the best job as a mayor, as you said, put the money where the mouth is and do it. So now we have to be very careful because we have left 15 minutes and this gentleman has a movie of 10 minutes. So as we said, we probably have to put the film in the end of the session that we get some time for the participants. So, Waleed.
Good morning to you all. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. My name is Waleed Al Saadi, and on behalf of Lusail Real Estate Development Company, it's our pleasure to be here with you today in this leading international event for the smart urban solution industry. I know we have a really short time, so I will prefer just to give you a small introduction about Lusail City. Lusail City Community Inspired project was launched in 2008, and it's one of the largest and the ambitious project currently being undertaken in the region. The mixed-use development spans over 38 square kilometers, and once finished will enable more than 450,000 people to live, work and visit. Just to make things short, I would like you to sit back, relax and fasten your seatbelt as you will be traveling to Qatar, because we want to show you how smart Lusail City is. Can we start the movie, please?
Welcome to Qatar, a dynamic society of growth and prosperity. Here in Qatar's capital is Lusail, the first city of ideas, the home of innovation, with goals, vision, ambition. The first districts are close to completion, just a few steps away to a new city. It's all here, all of it will be real. Lusail City is growing, and a new urban identity with it. Welcome to the LCCC, Lusail's Command and Control Center, the brain of Lusail City. The place where everything comes together. The place where all data is collected and analyzed.
You think they should stop it?
The LCCC is the centralized meeting point of all key authorities. One location for faster, more efficient communication for the benefit and safety of all of us. What defines a modern city? The answer is simple. A smart city uses the intelligence of an integrated infrastructure to find answers to the multiple challenges modern cities are facing now and in the future. Higher carbon emissions, growing populations, expanding operational costs, and increasing demand on services such as water, electricity, and cooling. Lusail Smart City provides solutions for a higher quality of life, more convenience and security, maximum efficiency, and sustainability. With Lusail Smart City, we are aiming for nothing less than that. A city is a complex system. The services implemented and technologies used benefit you in every facet of your daily life. Safe, free-flowing traffic, sustainable buildings and cost reduction, highly efficient use of resources, easy access to information, and increased mobility. All this is managed and controlled by the Lusail Command and Control Center. Lusail Smart City implements a citywide advanced utility infrastructure. Together with a state-of-the-art IT network of sensors, cameras, microphones, scanners, and much more. Lusail Smart City is designed from the ground up to be prepared for future challenges. We have turned the ideal system into reality, and the services that go with it are limitless. From communications and surveillance to operation and maintenance. Smart services are an integral part of your life. They facilitate daily tasks at your home, improve education, and enhance your health care. Things happen. Humans are not perfect. An accident. Automatically detected by the LCCC. Help is on hand. All necessary steps are taken immediately, automatically, in the background. All out of sight.
How much is left of the film? How much time is left of the film?
5 minutes. We can stop it when you finish the time.
Because we are already, we have 8 minutes to the...
The smart city ensures that help arrives where it's needed. Fast, faster than before, better prepared, for our safety, for our well-being, and for the perfect operation of our city.
Can stop it.
But is there a certain moment when it's better to stop in the sequence or not?
Still there's a lot.
We can't know everything. We don't know every restaurant or every event, every circumstance or opportunity. But we can get help when we need it from the Lusail Interactive Information System. Know what's going on.
Can you maybe stop the video? I'm sorry, but the gentleman kindly was agreeing because, as I said, you should have some time. We got a few questions and the speakers took the time now to look at them, the inputters, and maybe the best thing is we give them, first of all, half a minute to make some comments on what they read. Who wants to start? Mr. Mayor? Priya?
Should I just use the mic?
Yes, yes.
There's a great question here which says, is a walkable and cyclable city a more social city? And I think that's pretty much, I think many of us over here are talking about how we can increase the interaction between people in a city. So if you think about current smart cities, which is a top-down approach, and people living in walled estates or living in residential places which are walled and you don't allow for other kind of people to enter those spaces, I think things like walking and cycling really open up a city. And I think I'd give it to my colleagues here to add some points about social cities.
No, by far. I mean, looking at the last video, unless you have a lot of oil or a lot of finances, this is probably not something you can replicate in every city. So cities that don't have those means have to get a bit more creative. So I believe in Jane Jacobs' idea that if you can't afford the fancy cameras to detect what's going on in the street, you believe in a concept which is called the eyes of the street, which is the people that frequent the street, the people who stop a crime or the people intervene if someone is being harassed or if they see something, vandalism going on. So what we found out in the parts of the city where we've invested in more public spaces, well-lit public spaces, pedestrian and bike walkways, crime has significantly dropped. But business also has gone up. People who are not just driving through but walking by, the eyes of the street are not just the eyes of the people, but the front stores that serve these communities. So the economy does better if a lot more parts of the city are accustomed to pedestrians and to bikers who have the frequency of stopping and purchasing or consuming with others in a community a lot higher. So crime goes down and the economy goes up, and this is statistically proven. The last item that also goes down, clearly, pollution. When we did our first days without cars, we would put an electronic board that would show exactly on how the ppm10, the microparticles, would drop from the air of the city the days without cars. So clearly made a link and educated the public that more of this means less of that. And I think keeping it basic and simple is probably the best way to go forward when we communicate these types of changes.
Okay. No,
But they say it's still 15 minutes, but that's because it's automatic.
There are two questions related with the superblocks. The first, I didn't say what happened with the cars in the superblocks. For to have the same service, it means the same speed in the streets in the superblocks related with the speed in the current situation, we need to reduce about 13% of cars. But in the case of the urban mobility plan in Barcelona, the objective is 21, but this goal is related with the pollution, air pollution. Because after that we will have the level of contamination, of pollution in the city, in all part of the city, below of the levels, the low levels. And in the other hand, the other question is possible to build the superblocks in with buildings, perpendicular buildings. The critical element to build the superblocks and implement the superblocks is related when we have public space. When we have public space, always is possible to develop the superblocks. It's not necessary to build superblocks in urbanizations, in places without life in the public space. Okay? This is the question, is the key question.
I'll just make a brief comment on building social capital. There's certainly a lot of research, and probably the classic work is Robert Putnam. In societies like America, where people get out of cars and start walking and cycling, there's a direct correspondence. People get more engaged in civic affairs. They vote more often. They're involved in public cleanup drives, civic participation. So it's critically important. You begin to build an empathy and some sense of the needs of your fellow citizens. There was a question about what can cities do to foster transit-oriented development. What are the catalysts there? And you know, there's a very long kind of response I could make, but I would say beyond just proactivism, you know, not allowing markets to run their course, is to really intercede and try to do compact mixed-use, great walking environments around metro rail and BRT stations. One of the things we tend to do in many societies is we fail to acknowledge that the people who want to live in walkable neighborhoods, who want bikeable neighborhoods, transit-oriented neighborhoods, don't want to behave as the previous generation. They don't want to own cars. They want to be part of a sharing economy. They want to ride Uber and bikes and walk and take public transit. They don't want to be enslaved by car ownership. Unfortunately, our parking codes and many things don't acknowledge this kind of self-selection phenomena where for lifestyle reasons, people want to be in these different environments. We've done a lot of studies in the United States and even in Europe showing often we have twice as much parking in transit-oriented developments than is necessary. And that really drives up the cost of housing, parking spaces. A tucked under podium parking space or structured parking space can be $30,000 to $50,000 a space. You drive up the cost of housing, you consume valuable real estate, you make it less affordable. So to me, probably one of the most proactive things local governments can do is to turn parking policies and many other building codes that were came from the 1970s and 1980s on their head and really reflect our new values and our new lifestyle choices. And I think if we do, we would begin to see much better walkable, bikeable, transit serviceable cities.
I just want to elaborate just a little bit about Lusail. As you know, we are in the Middle East and the weather is very hot there. So walking or using cycle, it's very difficult, especially in the summertime. So most of the people, they are not interested to walk or do the cycling. But now we are trying in our new city to we have a cycleway all over the city. We have green areas all over the city. We have built a shaded area just to let people to drive and ride them bicycles and also walking in those areas. It's a new concept in Doha. People now in Qatar in general, due to the weather, people are trying to use riding the cycles and walking. It's not easy. It's a culture thing. You have to change the mentality of people to go in the sun and when it's hot just to walk, and it's very hot. So we are trying and doing our best now to improve and changing the mentality of people. Thank you.
There's another great question here about how do you make the local council react once the complaint about the potholes has been made to ensure the fast action to solve it. And I think we've spoken a lot about behavior change when it comes to citizens, but we also need to think about behavior change when it comes to government as well. So I think citizens can also help their local government to change based on how you can have this two-way feedback. But in order to make local government reactive, I think one of the best ways to do is to make things transparent. So if the councillor can see in real time what the issues are in the constituency, I can actually back them up either using social media or using the other kind of public channels. I think that's the kind of two-way participation that we're looking for, not just once in a while when the democracy votes. And I'll ask the mayor here to kind of add his comments.
Yeah, two remarks. If cars had a personality, we would know that cars would be happy if they're alone, because cars want a free traffic. But people are different. People want to be together. So the question is, again, a question of values. Despite the circumstances, the finances, the budget, you know, whether we are led by cars and what they want, to be alone, or whether we're led by human instincts of what we want, which is to be together. And once we've sorted out sort of this issue of value, then implementation, of course, takes some communication. For example, this whole issue of see report fix, where after things have been fixed, people get a push-up message with a photo of the same place that we fixed, also helps us to better budget. So as I face the council, I can make an argument and say, look, you know, over the past few months that I checked before I did the presentation, we had over 23,000 reports. Most of them have been fixed. It helps me to allow that how much money needs to go for maintenance. Before, people would sort of just cut and paste budgets from previous years. And I'd say, but how does this have any reality to do with the public? But now a lot of this data that comes in helps us measure the type of maintenance, the type of infrastructure investment that we need to do. The other thing someone was asking, how does this affect the local economy? I think for a lot of families, we were able to argue that it saves money, this, not only for the city, but also for them. How? I come from the Balkans, Eastern Europe. People are very big into families, particularly big into children. So when we do these focus groups, we'd say, what is the most important thing in your life? People would say, of course, my child. I'd say, but would you agree that the most important thing in your life should get the most amount of money from your family budget? Yeah, of course. Most of my money goes to educate and raise my children. And then we calculated that actually between the purchase of the car, the maintenance of the car, the insurance of the car, the gas for the car, and whatever else went to the car, people were spending in an average household 30% of their income for the car, not for the child. And people were shocked to find out because no one ever did the calculation. It was mostly folklore. Children are first, but it actually never added up. The cars were first. So then most people realized that we had, without our knowledge, had shifted our system of values and what we felt was important. So I think for a lot of the households that went through this sort of civic education and dialogue with the council, actually it brought more savings once they realized they were spending more on a big chunk of metal than on their child.
Okay, the super block is for me the base of the mobility model in a city, but also the urbanistic model. And then in 6 minutes I explain something about the super blocks, but we can follow with the idea of the super block in other aspects. Naturally, the inside of the blocks designed for Cerdà is take account in our proposal, naturally, okay? Not also the public space. All the questions related with the ecosystemic urbanism that we are designed for the new cities, this question is included. And also, the congestion in the scenario of superblock will be a problem if we don't have the solutions related with the number of cars in circulation. And then we need to make some aspects to develop to reduce this number of cars in circulation. The first and principal is the price of the parking. Is the question more important? But previously, we need to have a new bus network. In this moment, we have the half of this network, orthogonal network in Barcelona, and we hope the next year we will have the completely network, but also the bicycle network. This is the alternative. But after that, we need also reduce the number of cars because we need also reduce the pollution in our city and to reduce the possible congestion in Barcelona.
There was one other question that addressed the social dimension of cities, and the question was raised, do walkable, bikeable cities leave out elderly and disabled populations? And I think it's a very fair question, because in many ways you are planning and designing the city for movement, and some folks have constraints on their movement. I would certainly submit a walkable, bikeable city encourages senior citizens to get out, and probably is much more safe than a car-oriented city. But I on this question kind of would reflect on the work of someone like Jan Gehl, who's a well-known urban designer from Copenhagen, where he really emphasizes the importance of not only a city for movement, but also stationary activity, sitting, gazing, socially engaging, playing chess in public squares. So I think to the degree we restrain the presence of the car in our core cities, we do design cities that are much more sociable and much more open to disabled and senior populations. But I would submit, on balance, a walkable, bikeable city is a better city for disabled and seniors than a car-oriented city. So.
1 second.
I just want to add a last point that actually cars are changing. So we have driverless cars, we have Tesla, we'll be seeing different kinds of cars than traditional polluting cars. And I haven't seen questions coming from the audience, but maybe it's a question back to the audience of thinking about the future of mobility. I mean, we've been saying cars are bad, but we're going to see all sorts of new kinds of transport. So we're living in a very exciting time. So it's not just about walking and cycling. It's about also looking at really new forms of mobility, which are going to be coming out in the market.
Okay, I don't like so... segundo, está by...
In this moment, we have 4 superblocks implemented. I invite you to go, for example, a Gracia or in Bor area, Santa Maria del Mar area, even in the Poblenou new pilot superblock, okay?
Okay, folks, I know that it's a little bit frustrating when we choose the questions to answer and you don't put the questions yourself, that we get to know you because you are kind of on a tablet. And thus there is always a warm-up. There should be a quick wrap-up for 1 minute. You know, we have to overcome our heritage, which is kind of put into ourselves in the very early stage. We have to start to change the cities. You know, that is during the Mobility Week, but you know, there is now every year day, change your parking, change your urban space. And we should, as you said, Priya, we should listen to the children, because in this conference there was a child, but she was fed up with our talk, and she drew everything and she knew everything. Animals, rivers, there's only one car and the car is polluting. So she knows as well as we. And then there is this famous picture between a freeway and the fence. The kids know how to play. I didn't find the Albanian word, because whenever I go to a city, to another place, is there a word for hopscotch in Albanian? And in Arab, is it okay? Very well. But you know, sometimes they make foul tricks with the children. Huh? But anyway, they know how to use the space. You know, this is in Sydney. It's government property. You see the plates. They are the traffic cones, and what do the kids make? They make a ramp out of it. And then they train, they make photographs, so they use the public means to create space and use the space. And hopefully, this is an artist, which is really a mean one, because he invites the kids for a slide, and then he puts something on the slides to the kids could not go. Anyway, we talk not of a new problem, biking and walking. You know, in the 60s in Holland, they started the white bike, the share bike. And it was not for mobility or transport reasons. They were provos, that means provocative associations. And among else, they created bike sharing. So it's not Paris or Lyon or whatever. And they even had a wedding. And as we know now, we should have everybody on a bike, even if you need 3 wheels. And you see, everybody, somebody complains that the ladies are not going to the bike. This was in Ethiopia. The only guy is the instructor, of course, still a man, right? But anyway, the bike got into our culture again, sometimes a little bit exaggerated, like in Holland, where they have this beautiful lit-up pathway, or in Saudi Arabia, where they have air-conditioned bike passes. Anyway, let's try not to do this. Let's try to do this. And don't forget that in the street, a lot of people are even living, and they don't have much choice. And then the last word, he invited us to go to Gracia, where the famous Gaudi works are. But the trick is that for Gaudi, you have to come to Barcelona to see him. But Gaudi had a disciple, which was Nikki. She was kind of inspired by him. So only she was living everywhere and working. She was out in California. She was down in Italy, almost in all of your countries. Maybe I don't know if in Albania she had a thing. But anyway, she connects in a way this fantastic panel of speakers, which are really were very inspirational. And thank you very much.